So why is our government divided into three branches? The legislative, the executive, and the judicial. In Federalist number 47, James Madison is going to explain that liberty only survives when the power is separated, because concentrated power, no matter how noble the intentions, will always lead to tyranny. I'm Matt Hasquin. I'm a high school history and civics teacher, and we're taking a journey through all 85 of the Federalist Papers, one at a time, in order, and we've made it to number 47. So follow along here, and I'll set the stage for you. So the anti-federalists, those guys that were speaking out against what they saw as an overreaching government with the Constitution, they accused the Constitution of violating a sacred principle, and that was that the branches of government must be wholly separate and distinct. And they pointed to the blending of powers in the new government. They said, hey, the Senate approving appointments, the president being involved in legislation. And they looked at these things and they claimed it betrayed the very idea of separation of powers. But Madison's answer has a historical slant to it, but it also has a philosophical point to it. And the critics misunderstood the principle of separations of powers, and that's what he wants to get to. So his core argument, he agrees that separating powers is essential, but he argues that absolute separation is not only impossible, it's actually dangerous. And he writes, the accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. However, preventing that accumulation doesn't mean keeping the branches from ever touching. It just means preventing them from uniting in domination. So, Madison tries to define the true principle that each branch must be independent, but also interconnected enough to check the others. And he writes again in the essay, the magistrates of each department should be so far connected and blended as to have the constitutional control over each other. So complete isolation would make government unworkable, and complete fusion would make it dangerous. And so the Constitution instead chooses balance. Madison, like he has, and we've seen Hamilton do before, turns to history, and Madison looks at the British Constitution. The British Constitution is often praised for its separation of powers, according to Madison. But he does point out that in practice, the branches are all deeply intertwined. But liberty does thrive there, right? Why? Well, because the balance of interests, not total isolation, preserves freedom. And so he's reminding readers that perfection in theory can destroy functionality in practice. So Madison strengthens his case by examining America's own state constitutions. Not one, he'll say, has perfectly separate branches, because every state constitution blends powers to some degree, and no one calls the states tyrannies, right? And he writes, the political maxim requiring the separation of departments has been totally misconceived and misapplied. The point is not purity. The point is protection. So Madison goes on to highlight examples from the federal design of the Constitution. The president can veto legislation. That's a legislative check. The Senate confirms judges. That's an executive check. The courts can strike down laws. That's a judicial check. So each branch both governs and guards. That's not a flaw. This is not a flaw. It's actually the genius of the system. So in Madison's chain of reasoning, his logic here, his 5 reasons why, he says, tyranny arises when all powers unite in one body. And then separation prevents domination, but it must allow for coordination. Now, historical examples, England and the States, they proved that mixed systems work. The Constitution then blends power only to balance power. And then finally, separation with connection, not isolation, is the true safeguard of liberty here. There's number 47 in 5 easy steps. Now, Madison's tone is that of a teacher trying to correct confusion. He's being firm, but he's also being patient. He doesn't try to scold the critics, the anti-federalists. He's trying to educate them. And he knows the success of the new Constitution depends on not just on design, but on understanding. And Americans then trusting the logic behind it. So, when Madison applies his moral dimension to all this, it's no one and no branch should ever be trusted with unchecked power. Freedom is not protected by good intentions. Instead, it's protected by structural restraint. And so he takes Montesquieu's theory of the separation of powers and he changes it into more of a working American blueprint. Every modern argument over executive overreach, judicial activism, legislative gridlock, all traces back to Madison's design in Federalist 47, because the friction between branches is not dysfunction. It's actually democracy doing its job. Now, our takeaways tonight, one is that absolute separation of powers is impossible. Balance is the goal. Two, each branch must have independence and interdependence. And then three, the Constitution prevents tyranny not by distance, but by design. And I'm having trouble here. Now, wrapping this thing up, wrapping up 47. Number 47 is Madison's, basically, it's like a sketch of what freedom should look like. He's trying to show that liberty is not born out of chaos or purity, but it's born out of this careful balance, this equilibrium. And each branch of government limits the others, and in doing so, all three protect the people who built those branches of government. So it's the Constitution as kind of like clockwork, as machinery. It's delicate, it's interlocking, and if maintained properly, it endures. It's an enduring process. I'm Matt Hasquin. This is one of those things we should all know by being alive. And I hope this episode helped you out. And if this helped you see why separation of powers is more than just a theory, it's actually liberty in motion, please take some time and share this, follow me, maybe join me, but that's probably more important. Come back. Let's watch 48. I'll make 48, you watch it. And in 48, Madison's back again, and he explains why even separated powers still need constant checks in order to stay honest. Thanks for watching.